And hello, everybody. Today we have a jam-packed session from our friends from Ghost Dynamics and Section 6, which is also from Ghost Group. They are led by Belle. She comes bringing with her a cohort of fantastic people, and they're going to share today a bit of a practical show and tell of what they have been doing with using AI as part of their process.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, Hamnani. We're super excited to be here. I think we've been attendees of UX Auckland events in the past, and it's a real privilege to be able to be here in the presenter's seat today and do our part for the community. Got an amazing, I think it's an amazing set of things to share with you, and really keen to know what you think. So first, before we start, be good to tell you who we are. So first off, my name is Belle. I'm the head of experience for Ghost Dynamics, part of the Ghost 6 group. I run a team of designers and researchers and just general awesome unicorn people. I'm a curious geek. I really like people, and I think that definitely sort of comes across in our company culture as well. Everybody's kind of in the similar vein. And we're all early adopters, which has really kind of been a great personality quality to have at this time with the industry disrupting with all this AI.
Hi all, my name is Mike. I'm a principal consultant and engineer at Section 6, so we're one half of Ghost 6. We work on all the developer side, infrastructure and coding and all that super nerdy stuff.
Hey, I'm Andrea. I'm a UX designer. I consider myself a bit of an investigative person who likes getting under the hood and understanding problems from the bottom up. That includes any users that I'm designing for and any AI tools that I'm trying to use.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil Dunstan. I'm head of creative, aka head of crayons at Go. My role, I guess, is translating strategy into compelling creative, and I've had a background in both advertising and brand communications. So for my sins, I get to do all that stuff with words and pictures.
Hey team, I'm Michael, UX lead. So most of my work is around designing digital experiences for pretty complex products and services. And yeah, over the last year, I've been experimenting quite a bit with AI tools, mostly trying to figure out where they genuinely help the design process and where they're just hype. So yeah, really excited to be here and share what we've learned over the past year or so.
All right, so agenda is jam-packed. It's 1.5 hours, but it's going to go really quick. So we're going to start and talk a little bit about our work and our philosophy that underpins how we use AI. And then we're going to get into the tangible stuff. That's probably what you're all here for, really. So we're going to go into 2 case studies. And through those, we're going to see the AI tools that we used on those projects. We're going to give some live demos of some AI tools that we regularly use. And that's just because live demos are really awesome and they always go smoothly and nothing ever goes wrong. So that's why we love to do those. But seriously, we really just want you to be able to picture how you might use these in your work. And we think live demos is the best way to go. Okay, so a little background into the Ghost 6 group. We do work with a huge variety of local and international clients, from government to corporate to startup to charity. We work as true partners, solving all sorts of problems creatively with our awesome clients. And there's just 5 of us here today, but we're really part of a much larger, flexible, elastic workforce based across New Zealand, Australia, and Asia Pacific, with additional team members and clients across the globe. I myself was working from Taiwan last year, and just in our culture, we've got just a very flexible kind of mindset that, the best people could be anywhere in the world and we want to work with them. So if I had to summarize the kinds of work we do, I'd say it's human-centered solutioning. I'm just going to flick through really quick some examples of our work so you can get a bit of a flavor. So one key area for us is multi-year transformations. It's a great way that we can partner with our clients as one team, so working in-house with them. We've currently got 16 people embedded in the Tapai Tafti transformation program with the Ministry of Social Development in Wellington. I saw some of them pop up in the chat as well, so thanks for joining. And many of us have been part of other government and corporate transformations over the years. Of course, we do experience strategy and execution. So this is just one example we worked on recently with the Kathmandu team last year to modernize and launch a new e-com experience and design system. And I saw a couple of them here as well. Welcome. And close to our heart, we do work on accessible and inclusive citizen services. So here's one for CERT NZ, where like all kinds of New Zealanders could come online and check how safe their online presence was and learn how to prevent cyber attacks. In terms of strategic marketing activations, this one was fun and actually super stressful because, marketing activations always quite stressful with the hard deadline. This one was for the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, helping to launch a new way to purchase digital collectibles. And last but not least, often due to our government work, we deliver mission critical software and services. So mission critical just means, it's ultra secure, it cannot fail. This one is just for the New Zealand Customs, helping manage border security rules, but we've got many other examples which you can check out in our case studies on our website. All right, so why did we decide to do this talk? Well, apart from wanting to be part of the community, we just want to also bring everyone together to talk about this fairly major topic. We think everyone here, you're probably all sitting in one of three buckets. So the first bucket, you might be kind of chilling on the beach, doing your thing. So that means, you're doing work as usual, but you're kind of aware that there's this giant tsunami that's about to hit and you don't quite know when, and you're currently planning what you're going to do about it. So the tsunami being the AI disruption. Or maybe the tsunami has already hit you, you weren't ready, and that would be understandable. Like, it's all happening very, very quickly. Maybe the work, like the way that you used to do work, it doesn't seem to be working anymore, kind of worried about financial viability. It would be very easy to be swept away in the pace of everything that's happening. Or the third bucket, and I think this needs to be everyone's goal, maybe you're riding the wave. It's certainly what we're trying to do. It's really the only way we're all going to make the most of this AI disruption. We got to stay on the front of the wave, and we have to learn everything that we can. And we need to keep learning, because the thing that you learned yesterday, it might not be relevant tomorrow. Like some of our favorite tools from last year, like we aren't showing you today because there's better tools out there. So we're just here to share what we're doing and hope it helps you to stay on that wave in some way. I know we won't be the only source of your knowledge, but we really want to just add to that. So today we're trying to make this talk really practical. We're going to show the AI tools we regularly use, and everything, just to call out, it's from our context as a human-centered design business while working at scale. So it's not going to be hype, like, look, I built this website from scratch in 2 hours. Like, that's great, but it's kind of a totally different thing. And I love all of that stuff. Like, there is a lot of exciting hype to check out, but just in terms of our business and our lens, working on, in the real world at scale with our awesome clients, we felt that this lens was really important to share. Okay, so underpinning everything that we do with AI, we have some guiding principles or philosophies on how we like to use it. So the first philosophy, which I think is probably the most important one, is you cannot outsource your understanding of context. So again, with the hype, like I read every day on LinkedIn, people are saying, oh, great, you can just spin up some agents, they can do all of the research, they can summarize everything, what's happening for your business and your customers. It's going to spit out this like set of bullet points and you can just share it to your team and like, job done. And it's like, you could do that, but our view is like, just don't. Like, that would be terrible. All that context, all that information, like that's where all the key clues are. And you need to be able to immerse yourself in all of that information as firsthand as possible. It'll be like someone giving you a set of bullet points of like what it's like to ride a roller coaster rather than you riding it yourself, right? You're just going to miss so much getting the bullet point summary. And once you fully understand the context and the people you're serving, you can incubate that information and truly connect the dots to solve the problem. Much better than AI, because AI, it's useful, but it doesn't often understand which parts of the context are most important to the people that it's trying to serve. All right, philosophy number 2. So we believe humans must own the ideation. So AI is super good at repeating what's been done before, but if we're going to keep moving forward as a species, we need to innovate and solve complex problems in novel ways. We have to hold space for ourselves to come up with ideas that break the status quo. And I know it's really difficult, you know, people are like, oh, shouldn't you be doing that fast because you can just get AI to automate it? And it's like, we have to hold the space to allow our brains to, you know, ideate and come up with the real solution to the problem and not just try and apply, you know, the previous solutions to previous problems and just assume that that's the best thing for our latest challenge. So hold the space, own your ideation. Philosophy number 3. So leverage Moravec's paradox. So to paraphrase what Moravec pointed out, it's really like the stuff that's easy for humans is really hard for AI. And also the reverse is true. And that's because our brain has evolved for billions of years to be great at human skills. All right, so what Moravec was meaning in concrete terms, the paradox is that, you know, these things that are mind-numbingly easy for AI, so language translation, playing chess, and mathematics, they're actually super hard for us because they're not what our bodies and brains were primarily evolved to do. Like, these are relatively new skills if you think about the history of life on Earth and when did we start being able to do mathematics and playing chess. Like, it was really recently. And then on the flip side, the other side of the coin, the things that are hard for AI, like walking and running, like we've all seen those videos, hilarious videos of these like awesome billion-dollar robots just like totally caning it on a hill. Judging people's motivations, that's a really important one for human-centered solutioning. Smelling even, you know, these are stuff that is just second nature to us because we are humans. And AI, I'm not going to say it's never ever going to catch up, but it's going to take a long, long time. Like we've all seen Star Trek and you've seen Data, you know, the character Data, and he's not even there yet. And that's like, you know, many years into the future. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Like there is stuff that we are really, really good at and that AI kind of sucks at. Okay, so our prediction is that jobs that leverage the advantages we have as humans serving other humans will remain important. So an obvious one, you know, nurses, they're going to be sweet. They'll probably spin up some, you know, nurse robot beings, but they're just not going to be as awesome as real nurses. Like sometimes you just want a human to do that job of looking after you, especially when you're sick. So I think nurses will still be needed. And our other prediction is, you know, so will practitioners of human-centered solutioning. The caveat is you have to keep insisting on using your human-to-human skills, and you use AI for what it's good at, and you pair those skills together. So don't try and do what AI is good at, and don't let AI try to do what you're good at. Understandably, there's lots of panic out there, like AI is going to take our jobs, and it's justified panic. Like I know probably some people have already lost their jobs due to all of this panic, but it's our belief that things will balance out, and it's going to, you know, become apparent that AI just isn't as good at leading the human-centered solutioning as humans are. So I hope that that explains a little bit about what sort of our foundation and how we come to review AI tools and how we think about using them in our work. And yeah, hope that sets the scene for the case studies coming up. I will hand over to Phil and Andrea.
Okay, for our first case study, we're diving into how we built a tabletop game for the Ministry of Education. Our goal was to take the boring out of cybersecurity and make staying up to date feel essential. The ministry was in the middle of cybersecurity content overhaul, and everything from their website and their sector-facing collateral communications was being looked at. They needed a fresh way to really engage schools and get them to thinking about cybersecurity in a way that actually sticks. We often think of cybercrime as something that happens to others, but the data tells a different story. Last year, reported losses in New Zealand hit 26 million, and if we account for the attacks people were too embarrassed or too busy to report, we're likely looking at much, much more than that. Unfortunately, our schools have become a primary target. Whether it's an individual primary school or entire software systems, the threat is growing. The reality is that many of our educators are flying blind. They don't have the dedicated staff or the fire drill plans in place to handle a breach when it happens. So how do we fix this? The cybersecurity team at the ministry realized we couldn't just hand over a dry manual and hope for the best. We needed something hands-on. We decided to build a tabletop game, a way for school staff to sit down and actually play out a crisis before it happened to them in real life. For many, a cyber attack feels like this invisible, abstract thing. They don't know what it looks like, how it starts, or just how messy the aftermath can be. Our goal was to make those what-ifs and turn them into an engaging, discussion-based experience. Instead of a lecture, we're giving them a safe space to spot their own gaps and figure out exactly what they need to be ready for tomorrow. We used AI to sprint through the creative and research phases, which helped us map out the landscape and build core content at speed. It basically killed that blank page problem, acting as a set of extra hands to help us build something more robust and more quickly. But, and this is a big one, AI isn't going to fly the plane for us anytime soon. So we, the humans, were the final arbiters of everything, and every piece of content was double-checked and edited by us and the ministry's experts to ensure that while the tech gave us the speed, the humans provided the accuracy and the final stamp of approval. We got wildly excited about the brief and went to full hunter-gatherer mode. We scouted for exemplars that didn't just look good, but felt human and tactile. We wanted to create something people would actually want to reach out and touch, moving this exercise away from a digital chore towards an experience that felt grounded and real. We ignored AI for this part of the process. For us, the reckoning part, the tossing around of ideas and shaping things that are really important, set the creative stage for us. We started with a basic outline, but we hit a brick wall pretty quick. We didn't have enough of a reason for people to care. Facts are one thing, but getting busy staff to lean in is quite another. We knew our game had to go do two things at once. It had to educate, but it also had to be actionable. We didn't want people just nodding along. We wanted them to be thinking, wow, what do I do now? To make that happen, we anchored everything in real-world scenarios, relatable situations that could actually happen in a classroom or office tomorrow. We designed a gameplay structure to be quick, spicy, and real. It's built around 3 high-stakes scenarios, each played in 4 quick-fire round discussions. As they roll through each round, they are presented with set responses to help them check whether their discussion's on the right track. And to keep it authentic, we inject these wild cards, unpredictable real-world twists that throw a wrench into the works mid-game. By the end, schools don't just get the theory, they get learning snapshots and a clear roadmap for what to do next. It's a fast-paced, facilitator-led and focused on getting schools to the understanding their best actions. During the content build, ChatGPT quickly became our best friend for heavy lifting. What really blew us away was its grasp of the New Zealand context. It mapped everything super well to the New Zealand emergency response framework we were working within. But while AI gave us the momentum, we humans had the final say. Every response was vetted and sanity checked to ensure it was 100% accurate. To personify the threats, we created a cast of cyber gremlins. They aren't just icons, they had personality and illustrate key points. We started with Midjourney renders and then pushed them through Topaz Gigapixel for high-res upscaling. That's an incredibly difficult task in its own right. And then Photoshop for color correction, retouching, and clear cutting. And let me tell you, if you've ever tried to clear cut here, especially here like this, you'll know exactly why we needed the AI tool inside Photoshop. We essentially let these guys loose across everything we created. They weren't just window dressing, they gave the whole project real personality and flavor. By using them as visual anchors, we took those dry technical points and gave them a furry face, making the entire message stick better. We went all out on this thing. We built out everything from exhibition banners to full workshop setups. So when the audience walked in, they were completely immersed in that world. And here's a wee test for our little presentation. As you can see, we called the game Glitch, a name that perfectly captures that uh-oh moment in a cyber event. We built it into an A3 tent card, which guides players through the narrative in a linear way. We included everything you need to get started, from setup instructions to nominating a navigator to keep the game on track. The layout is simple. You've got the scenario set up on one side, and on the other, you flip over to the real resolves. And of course, we've got those wild cards. You can drop those in any time to add an unpredictable spice to the round. So all in all, something that could be played around the table and was easy to engage with.
Yeah, I'll get right into it. So at our organization, and likely at yours as well, research is usually time-intensive and expensive. We handle a lot of contextually complicated work. You know, this was a fairly lean project by our standards, but we were still developing a first-of-its-kind tabletop experience, working with an already complex industry of cybersecurity, and targeting specifically the professionals within the education sector within New Zealand. On top of that, what we actually took into testing was a digital version of what Phil just showed you. So it's not like we were just usability testing a checkout flow or something like that. Due to the hard deadlines from our client, we also needed to turn this research around really quickly, all while maintaining the same level of quality that we always strive for. So basically, we didn't have that much time, but we did have Dovetail. So I'll show you that now. So this is Dovetail, and we've been using Dovetail intermittently over the past few years, and it really feels like a tool that respects the work that UX researchers do. Last year, they rolled out a bunch of AI-powered features that really align with our team's philosophy around AI usage. It allows our human researchers, with all the context and nuance of the project, to stay in control of interpretation and validation. How we ran the interviews stayed exactly the same as they normally do. We held and recorded our interviews on Zoom with our participants and 2 researchers. After each interview, the researchers would have a debrief session to identify any early signals while everything was still fresh, and that becomes really important later on. After each session, we uploaded the recording into Dovetail, and the first AI-powered layer is automatic transcription, which is probably expected at this point, but I have found it performs a little bit more reliably than Zoom, or especially Microsoft Teams, especially when it comes to New Zealand accents and terminology. The next and my favorite AI-powered feature is Dovetail suggested highlights, which are over here on the right-hand side. These are pulled directly and automatically from the transcript. It basically cuts down the transcript into insightful, focused verbatims and assigns some proposed tags based on what the AI thinks it might be about. This is kind of, an old project, so I've already added a bunch of tags, but I can show you. These purple tags over here are the sort of generic starter tags that it will always start off with. You can review each highlight, and you can also add, remove, or create a new tag. And I'll generally start by creating new tags that align with those early signals that we identified while the research was ongoing. These over time will get more refined as I get deeper into the data. And finally, when you've got all your tags in place, you can accept or reject the highlight. And so with that, the researcher maintains a lot of the control over the data and what's going into the final insights. If Dovetail AI misses a highlight that you know is important because you're a human, you can still go in and manually highlight anything that you need and easily add the tags over here, and those get automatically accepted. The accepted highlights are stored here under the Highlights tab. And you can see that this is already a really nice and structured and filterable view. But each tag also automatically comes with its own little highlight reel. And this is like really actually a huge time saver if you want to share clips relating to a specific insight or theme. I'm not going to play it due to user privacy and all of that, but you can see all the clips that it's assembled down here, and you can share it in like 2 clicks. You can also add descriptions to each tag. So those are over here. And maybe that's something that you would expect or want like AI to generate for you, like little written descriptions. But I guess with the risk of misinterpretation or hallucination from AI, I actually prefer having control over this as well. It doesn't have to be too long. It takes like 10 seconds, and it's totally worth it because the AI can digest this and all of the tags that you've been manually creating and or assigning. And over time, it becomes more aligned to your interpretations and tagging logic. This ends up reducing a lot of repetitive effort because you can go back to the source data, and you can essentially get Dovetail to suggest you like an infinite amount of highlights. You can keep getting it to resuggest you highlights over and over again. And every time it generates a new highlight, it will automatically have any newly created tags in mind. I'm not going to generate it right now because it does take a few minutes, but you'd eventually just spend a lot less time toggling on and off all of these tags and more time just cutting through the noise to find the research gold via accepting and rejecting. Once we finish tagging, we can, move on to our insights and recommendations. And Dovetail can also generate a few types of reports for you using AI. So they have a few little templates over here. But since the insights and recommendations is quite important and you kind of need that contextual nuance here as well, I will actually prefer to create my own set of quick and dirty insights independently of the AI and use the AI generated insights to validate and interrogate my own thinking. It's almost like having like another researcher's perspective on the project. So I'll show you the one that we generated for the Ministry of Education. And obviously, the AI was missing a lot of the context of the project. So I actually found the sentiment overview section and some of the themes that it found. They weren't like inaccurate, but they weren't relevant to our specific project goals. But what I did really find useful was down here in the opportunities and risk areas. These really matched the insights and recommendations that I had developed independently. So I put them down here as a little reference. Things like it needed to be more actionable, more practical, and we wanted to focus more on preventative measures. Those all matched up really well. And I guess considering that this project had a pretty small research team, it was just nice getting that extra bit of validation to increase our confidence in the recommendations that we developed. Stop sharing screen. So, our research projects typically take a lot of time and mental energy. For this tabletop game, this round of research, turnaround from the final interview that we held to presenting insights to the client took only 4 hours. So that AI augmented workflow removed a significant portion of the manual synthesis effort, all while preserving the quality of our insights. Outside of time savings, our team is probably happier every time we get to step into Dovetail because, we get to spend less time on boring stuff like pushing sticky notes around and more time on the creative side of research, which is analysis and recommendations development. They're still leading the research, but with AI, it's a lot more fun, efficient, and valuable. One last note, I guess, there is a level of ethics and considerations that responsible researchers need to maintain when engaging with AI tools, especially when it comes to user privacy. We believe Dovetail is pretty rigorous when it comes to user data, but we still always make sure that we're checking in with the client first, sending through Dovetail's privacy and AI training policies before we jump into the tool. Like everything else with research, consent is important. So hopefully you've learned something that you can take into your own research workflow. And if you're not really into the research side of things, Belle and Mike will definitely have something for you. Thank you.
So this is a case study for the KiwiSaver Significant Financial Hardship Withdrawal tool that we delivered for public trust at the end of last year. The primary tool, the AI tool that we used in this project was Claude, and this case study is going to give you a glimpse into the Figma MCP to Claude UI to front-end build pipeline that we used. So just some quick background so you can kind of understand the purpose of the project. So Public Trust, awesome client. I think there might be some people from Public Trust here today. They've been around for 150 years and they do many things, but one of them is that they're a supervisor for KiwiSaver schemes. So as you know, with KiwiSaver, people tend to get out their money for their first home or for their retirement, but people can also apply to get out their money early in case of serious illness or significant financial hardship. In these areas, Public Trust reviews and assesses applications which come through from KiwiSaver scheme providers, who in turn have gotten that information from KiwiSaver members. So the previous system, before we sort of partnered and launched the new system, it involved a lot of manual work for everyone. So filling in forms, spreadsheets, passing them around via email. And the complexity is really because of all the people in the system, you know, the KiwiSaver members, providers, Public Trust supervisors, they all needed to access and action these applications back and forth between them, and not always in a linear way. And so this solution, it couldn't just be a digital form. Half the challenge was actually in understanding the context and the complex workflows that we were trying to digitize, and really, like what I was speaking about earlier, is like immersing ourselves in the context, you know, getting to know the supervisors, talking to, you know, KiwiSaver members about, you know, the state of mind that they're in when they need to get the significant financial hardship application underway, just understanding all of that so we could solve this properly. So the inefficiencies of the old system, they were just becoming multiplied as well. The number of these applications has been skyrocketing, probably says a lot about the state of the economy and the state of the world. But actually at the end of the day, is just everyone was getting stressed. People who are in financial hardship having to wait up to a month or even more to get their own money out. And then all the staff of the provider and Public Trust organizations having to spend more and more time to process more and more applications. It was just all very stressful. So we were asked to come and run our process and do it really fast. It was basically a 6-month process. There we are, sprinting from June to December last year. And as mentioned, you know, there's a lot of pressure to deliver fast, and we were asked by Public Trust, who are very innovation focused, how we propose to undertake this work and finish it all in time. And so this is our answer. It was actually in the RFQ. So when we were applying to win this work, and we said this, which I think is really important to share with you all. So we said, from use on other projects, we estimate a 20 to 30% saving on build time using Figma MCP to Claude, that pipeline. And we also highlighted that the saved time is typically fed into other parts of the project, needing more detail. For example, including more features in MVP. So you might notice that we never said we can bring the deadline forward. But we did say that the quality and the feature scope, we believe, could be much better than you're expecting if we use this approach. And so I think this was really important for us to put in, because there is a lot of pressure. You know, everyone's like, oh, you're using AI, then everything should be quicker and faster, and we should pay you less and all that sort of thing. But we really wanted to communicate this transparently about how we view the benefits it's going to give us. And I think it's kind of like when you're prompting ChatGPT to write something and you give it a prompt, it spits out the first pass really quick. That's true, right? But then typically you'll sit there and you'll reprompt and you'll refine what it's given you, and you'll work with it to come out with something that's really high quality. And at the end, you've probably spent the same amount of time as if you'd just written it yourself, but the end result is higher quality. And so that was really the concept that we wanted to get across in our response. And I think Public Trust, being awesome people, also vibed with that. All right, so this is just a little list of the must, shoulds, and coulds. So as you can see, in MVP, we all know that you typically deliver all of the musts, some of the shoulds, and none of the coulds. The coulds is basically like the not doing list. And that usually results in a lackluster MVP where everyone's like a little bit disappointed because it doesn't quite do what it needs to do, even if it is just an MVP. So what we did is we managed to deliver almost everything on the Moscow list. And we're really proud. Like, I think it's a really high quality MVP, and so is public trust. So everybody's stoked. So I think that's a really exciting thing that we can hopefully look forward to. I think sometimes when you're in a room and someone says, oh, let's do MVP, everyone kind of looks around. It's like, we know that it's probably going to be a bit shit. But, you know, going forward, I think, you know, this could mean MVPs can actually be good again. So, yeah, super cool. All right, so the outcome, so it's been great. Basically saved a lot of time and stress from all of the people that are in the ecosystem. So, you know, we've got 50% or more faster times to process applications on average. Previously, what was taking a few weeks to process is now typically done in a few days. Right, and then another key stat. So we committed about 40% more lines of code than a similar size project about 2 years ago. So we were the same team, and using this process, we committed so much more code. And I know that that doesn't always mean good news, right? Like, we could be committing like a bunch of junk code and celebrating. But we had checks and balances in, you know, even though our velocity was really fast, we still had, you know, all our tests for quality and security and all the normal things that we would judge whether this was, you know, quality delivery. And those all passed with flying colors. So this was a really good indicator for us that we really did deliver more quality work in the same space of time by using this process. And so just quick call out, you know, AI isn't the main reason that this project was successful. I think Amy from Public Trust has a great piece of feedback here. The way the team moved at pace while putting collaboration first and without skipping over any of the detail was key to the success of this challenging launch. So, you know, that really speaks to what I was referring to in the beginning around immersing ourselves in the context, still doing a great job at the human-to-human collaboration. Like, we could not have done this really well without that deep collaboration with public trust. And, you know, no client, even if they're pressuring you to move faster with AI, no one wants to do it at the expense of the quality of the work. So I believe that we have to, you know, kind of still stick to our process and still see what you can do to improve your efficiency with AI. But at the end of the day, like, hold the line and, you know, tell your clients, we want to have a quality outcome for you, and this is why, and this is how we're going to do it. We're still going to have some manual parts of the work like we always have, and we're going to accelerate in these other ways. And I believe, you know, great clients, they're going to listen and they're going to get it as well, because, you know, your clients are using AI and they're also coming up against the limits of it. So it's not going to be a surprise to them when you frame it that way. All right, so let's get quickly into our actual, Claude and Figma MCP process. All right, Mike.
Thanks, Belle. Yeah, so let's just talk about the way we used to do things before AI. So all you lovely designers would come up with your beautiful vision, well researched and perfect. And then I would come along in Figma. All the designers I've met use Figma. If you use something else, that's interesting to me. And I switch over to dev mode and I boot up a project and do some code stuff. And then I totally ruin your perfect vision and get the spacing wrong and the topography and all this stuff. And I think it looks pretty good. And I say, job done. And then we go round and round on the board, fixing things right. And, you know, we get there in the end and it realizes the vision, but it's quite painful because I just don't have the eyes for that kind of thing. So that's the old way of doing things. And during public trust, this was still some of the way of doing some things. AI just continues to rocket along, and we'll see some of the progress as we go. So next slide, please. I just want to talk about one thing that we're not going to talk about today. There's a bit of hype about doing projects in the reverse flow. So since Claude and Codex and all of these different models are so amazing, right? Why don't we just let them drive the show? Let them just come up with the whole design system and implement it, and then port it back into Figma, and then us, you know, designers and coders, and then work with that to mold it in the right direction. That is okay. If you're just doing a quick POC and you just want to get a feel for things, and it's not too complicated, it's like your garden shed, right? I mean, if I put this together with my tools, if it leaks a little bit, I can deal with it. You know, maybe my wife will be a bit unhappy, but no one's going to die. It's going to be okay. It's a garden shed. You know, it's for exploring. But that's not what happens when you need to build a hospital, right? You can have many people use it for a long time, different organizations. It's going to be complex. You just have to have a plan. So it needs to be designed. Ghost is great at that. They go and interview everyone, like the users, the business, all the different partners, and actually sit down with them and work out what it is that they currently do, what do they want to do, what would be a good design, how will it be future-proofed, and then they put that into Figma for us, right? And then we let the AI look at that, because otherwise you're just going to run into problems that you can't live with. So we're not talking about going the other way today. We're talking about the designers running the show. Next slide. So I will take over and let's just have a look at, oh, sorry, there's one more slide. The new way of doing it, right, is you have Figma and you have Claude or Codex or whatever your AI is. You can use other ones. We use Claude for some technical reasons and also preference. And MCP may be something you've heard of. It sounds a bit scary. I remember hearing about MCP and going, oh, wow, this sounds like this new technology. It must be really crazy to talk to all these tools. All it really is Claude says, I want this and this and this in a certain order. And then Figma or whatever is on the other end responds with some JSON of the result. So that's really it's just text. It's really much more fancy than it sounds, but sometimes simple is great. So we're going to have a look at this process.
Oh, before you do that,
Yep.
I might just show from a design side the setup that you have to do. Just really quickly, I won't be able to explain like the full detail in this little slot, but just to give you a heads up, if you want to set up your file so that Claude can read it through Figma MCP accurately, you are going to have to do some some pretty OCD setup work. So shout out to Ryan Christie, who's our design lead at Ghost. He basically built an entire design system all set up in this way in like 0 time. We don't need AI because we've got Ryan Christie. So all the padding and spacings, so like, you know, you typically type in, you know, I want 8 pixels or I want 16 pixels or 24 pixels. That all has to be set up as variables in Figma. And then I'm not sure if you can see on the screen share, but there's a little dark box around the numbers. So that indicates that that's not a number. That's actually reading from a variable that's been set up in the back part of Figma. And then also your colors and even, you know, your fonts, you can set them up as variables, and it all just helps when Claude reaches through that MCP layer and reads the file, it can get the exact values rather than approximating. If you want to learn more about this, this was this lady, Romina. I feel like I know her because I just follow all of her stuff, but she's just a legend, and she's like a full-on first adopter of like all of this tech, and she explains it really well. She seems really altruistic. This is where we learned about Figma MCP in the first place, and that's a good place to start. But there's also Figma blogs and, you know, things to just help you figure out like, how do I set this up really well so that we can start using this new pipeline. Cool. Now you can take over, Mike.
So let's start somewhere familiar. Figma. These are some of the designs for the public trust KiwiSaver application. It's a huge application. We're not going to see all of it. This is just one piece that the member sees when they need to withdraw their application. Well, they make an application withdrawal. So we need basic things like what's their name, what's their telephone number, you know, everything about them. There's a couple of screens here. These are all the mobile ones. At the end of the section, they get like, a green check mark. Well done. Go to the next section. We have desktop designs below and some tablet breakpoints. And then we have questions about your household. Where do you live? How many people are with you? What's your living situation? Again, mobile and so on. Income and assets starts to become a bit more screens. There's just a lot of information that needs to be collected. And then finally, it just explodes when you get to these guys. So we'll talk about the challenges that we had to deal with all of this and what's happened. So in Figma, on the side, you can see we've got MCP sitting here. Now, where you enable that in Figma changes all the time. So just have a look at the documentation on the Figma website, and they'll tell you. I had a look for it yesterday, and they moved it, but it's not too bad. It's really just click a button, and away it goes. I'll also note that all these designs are linked to a design system. So you have all your icons, all the logos, all the stuff. And what Belle was talking about was naming everything. So when you have these groups in here, if you just go, this is group 6, right? That doesn't really help an AI understand what the context is, or a developer. So if you can name your colors, name your groups, name your pages, and you do all that work for variables so everything's linked, it helps a lot. So we'll just have a look at the Figma website. And it just says there's a bit of a wall of text here, but all this is saying is what are the different things that Figma MCP can do. Now, there were only a couple of these when we were getting started, and now there's a bunch of them. But the important ones are, one, this, where you ask it to generate a design. So it connects to your Figma. It works out what are all the buttons, what are all the colors, what are all the spacings, all of the stuff. And it puts together this document that says what the design system is. And we'll have a look at that in a second. Then it can get all of the variables that are used in the current selection. So how it works is that you select what you want the AI to see, like this one, and then you talk to it through MCP, and it will pull out that, which we'll see in a moment. And so it gets all the variables. And the one other thing it does is also it grabs a screenshot, which is quite useful, because then afterwards it can use the screenshot to compare what it's coded up and go, does it match or not, and iterate a little bit. Now, there's a bunch more stuff here now, but those are the key things that it did. So when we were putting this together, you could select maybe one of these small screens here, and you could pass it to Claude, and it could manage. If you tried to select 2, it would be like, whoa, this is way too much information. I'm dead. That's it, right? So then you'd have to select this one, and then you'd select the other one, and then you go, well, okay, now I'm the second screen, and when you click the first one, then you get to me. And if you didn't do all that work that Ryan did, like with the named variables, right, each time you did a new screen, it would completely reinvent the wheel, and it would be like, I'm going to reinvent a button, which is great when you do your first thing right, but you actually, then when you start having to do code to say, okay, when you see a button, you're going to have to go and look and see if a button already exists, and then use that button and add a new color if it has it. Like, there was all this micromanaging work. So I'll talk more about like what it was like and what were the difficulties and what were the things that we learned at Public Trust. But we also want to imagine, okay, well, what if I did this project today, or in fact yesterday? What would it go like? So I will do something slightly intimidating, a developer's old friend, and it will be painless, I promise, a terminal. And all I've done is just made a new directory, so UX demo. And I've just said to Claude, I want you to create a React project with Tailwind and ShadCN. So that's the component library that I use. And then later we're going to connect via Figma MCP tool, and you're going to come up with a design system and implement it. Please go. Now, we could do this, but that's no fun. Let's just waste some tokens. So away it goes. It removes all the default CSS and all that kind of stuff. And it says job done. So then I boot up VS Code. And we have it sitting here. And one of the first things I said was, okay, use the Figma MCP tool and come up with a design system. So it came up with this markdown, and it's saying, okay, here's the surfaces, the borders, the icons, the spacing. Here's how they're named. This is what it looks like in Tailwind. Here's like this theme that we do. Here are all the components that we're going to use, the buttons, the checkbox, all the badges, right? Because it's seen in Figma, and then Figma's gone, okay, well, there's the button, and it's linked to the component library that Ghost has put together, and going, great, there's the button. When we first did this at Public Trust, it did not do that. It just tried to reinvent everything all the time, but now this is what it does, which is pretty amazing. And it's also worked out, oh, there's headers and footers and so on, because it used to just try and stick a new header in every file. And so we had like a long list of instructions that we would share around to be like, please don't reinvent the wheel constantly. So we've done that. This is the first thing that you do. And then I thought, well, where are we up to now? Well, how about I'm just going to be really ambitious, and I'm going to select this entire thing of About You. And I said, please implement it. And let's have a look at the browser. So we just refresh the page here, adjusted the mobile designs, and this is what it spat out. We can make it look like an actual mobile phone. And we see we've got a name, so we can add in sister, and it's got the right piece. It's got a date picker, which is pretty incredible. Like, it couldn't do that before. Also, these little numbers here, like see the number 1 in there. When we worked on the project, it just could not for the life of it work that out. It's amazing to me seeing it doing that now, just one shot. So we can go next. Are you in paid employment? We're just going to say no. It's got the icons that it's pulled through, so it never used to be able to do that. You used to have to go and manually pull the icons and paste them across, because again, it would just freak out. This is way too much context, what's going on. And we can do this. So I am in Hardship, and we've completed the section. I thought, great, I'm going to be super greedy and then just do the whole next one. And in fact, I managed to do all of this and then all of these ones, and it actually worked coming through. Like, obviously it's not saving the data anywhere. There's no real infrastructure underneath. There's some weird things, like, so if I select an item and I go next, see how it like bumps me to the top? There's no real like context from Figma telling it like where should you scroll to, or what the behavior is, or if I go back to edit one of these things, like it doesn't know what to do. It's doing something weird with the footer, right? We know that it should expand and give you maybe an edit button or something. That's not really captured there. So to give a live demo, and we'll just see what happens. We've just got a mobile view. Let's open up VS Code again.
Oh, Mike, I might just cut in there just in the interest of time.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got one more demo after this, but maybe we could just summarize. Like for me, seeing this as well, I'm like, wow, it like now knows the context of what question came before it and what comes next. Because I remember when we were working on the project, it kind of had trouble understanding that this is like a series of progressive disclosure questions. How many hours did you spend to just make this new demo?
Probably an hour and a half.
An hour and a half, like that's like just...
We had 6 devs, super motivated, very skilled, working from late June to early December. Obviously, there's a lot more to the app, but like it took us time. It's crazy how much it saved us then and how much it's progressed since then.
Yeah, cool. And maybe you could just finish off by summarizing the...
Yep, so the learning, so what I was going to do is ask it to just do the mobile version, and it takes about 40 seconds, and it expands, and it learns, and it moves all the buttons in the right place, and it does all this crazy stuff. I can do that later, but the learnings are pretty much it's the same as any human team. You run into documentation issues, right? So you have 6 people, you're all moving at pace, communication's important, but now they have agents, and like they're communicating with their agents, and everyone's running on assumptions. You really need to write those down, because even as designers, as you flow through an application, like what happens when you hit an edit button, right? Does it automatically update when you change things in there, or is it a dirty state and you can exit out and it goes away? Like everyone has different ideas about this that's intuitive, and you run into them. So you really have to document things, and it's really just the same things that you run into With a normal human team, you need to have good tests, you need to have good documentation, you need to have communication. And if you get those right, you can go really far. But otherwise, at some point, the AI will make a mess, and it's just trying to do its best with what assumptions it can. So it's all about context.
So I'm again going to switch up a little bit and share something a little bit different. So I'm going to be showing you guys an AI tool we've been experimenting with recently called Relume, and how we used it on a recent project. So some of you may have heard of it before, but it's basically this tool where you can generate things like sitemaps, page structures, move into wireframes, UI, and then even to a live site, just using prompts. So yeah, I was just keen to share with you guys our experience using that kind of tool. So what was the situation we were working with? So we had a company launching a new website, and it needed to go live very quickly. But the input we had was extremely limited. So we basically just had a list of page names, no content, no narrative, no real sense really of how the site should work. So the challenge for us was, it wasn't just designing the site, it was actually figuring out what the site should even be, but in a very short time frame. So this is what we were working with. This was essentially the starting point, just a rough list of pages and a very high level structure. And normally, if you were at this point, you'd spend a chunk of time doing the setup work. So building the structure, IA, and basic wireframes to get to a point where you can start to have meaningful conversations and iterate and refine with the client. And this is where we chose to utilize Relume. So I'm going to jump into the tool quickly and give you guys a little live demo of how it works. So I'm in Relume here. So across the top, you can see we can go from sitemap to wireframe to even defining a style guide and moving into hi-fi UI. So starting here, you can start by giving it a prompt. So giving it some context about the site that you are trying to create. So for this example, I would say this is for an electric bike company. Introduce the brand, history, maybe different bike models, key features and tech, share rider stories. And you can set how big the site you want, how big you want it to be. Go generate. And then it will start fleshing out a sitemap. So it will figure out what pages the site should have. So it's got a home, about us, bikes, along with a product page, it looks like, a writer stories page, and then I guess a specific article page or story page. So it's done that in seconds, and it has also had a go at figuring out what the content blocks should be in each page. So these are, I guess, the different components on the page, as well as even a little description for what it thinks that content block should include. So at this point, you can update the descriptions for each of the pages and regenerate. You can swap out these components, add more parent pages. It's still quite flexible at this point. But let's say here you're happy with how the overall structure is looking. You can go to wireframe. And then what it will do is, in the background, it's got a library of all of these components that it will use for each of these different, I guess, scenarios. So that like the descriptions we had, and then it will just start building out these wireframes before your eyes. So let's just zoom in on the homepage here. So we've got like a hero area, some call outs for key features, some hero stats, products. You can go in if you like, and if you don't quite like something, you can switch out the component over here. And it also does this for every breakpoint as well. So you can switch to mobile, and it's got it in mobile as well. So very fast to just smash something out. And then even from here, you can go the full way through. So you can go through and define a style guide. So add whatever colors you like, typography, and yeah, just keep pushing it along. It can integrate with Figma, with Webflow, and you really could go end to end if you wanted. So yeah, that was a surprisingly smooth demo. It didn't run into any hiccups, but yeah, hopefully that gives you guys a taste of kind of what the tool can do end to end. So that's Relume, but for how we used it in our projects, let me go back to our slides. Cool. So, how did we use it? So I included some context about the company in the overall prompt, and then I plugged in the pages we already knew about from that initial input we were given. And then I also added some guidance at a page level around what each page might include. So what we were trying to do essentially was, instead of spending hours setting up the scaffolding of the site, the AI gave us that structure almost immediately. And this is kind of the perfect reason or use case to use AI, because we didn't have any context or information to work with. We needed some help to get up and running and get to something tangible that we could then work with the client to figure out what we wanted. So from there, we were able to generate a full set of wireframes, or from those simple page names and a few thoughtful prompts. And so instead of spending time creating throwaway wireframes just to visualize ideas, we instantly had something tangible we could work from. And that was the key. We needed artifacts we could actually sit down and with the client and have proper discussions around, something visual we could both look at and work together on. So yeah, this is where the human part of the process comes back in. We didn't use AI to replace the entire design workflow. We used it tactically in this moment to remove, I guess, that upfront monkey work so we could focus on the higher value thinking. So yeah, with something visual on the table, we could start asking stuff like, what's missing, what isn't communicating the right thing, what should be reorganized. We were kind of massaging the wireframes, refining the structure, and shaping the experience for our audience. So AI helped us get up and running very quickly. It generated a full set of wireframes and gave us a really good starting point. And technically, as you guys saw from the demo, we could have kept pushing the tool further and tried to turn that into hi-fi UI. But for us, I guess in the context of this, that wasn't really the point. For us, the real value was, using AI to help us get past that blank page really quickly, establish a structure we could work from, and that's where we could start adding value and start making it real. So yeah, once we had got to a point where we were happy in terms of structure, this is where I guess the human craft really comes in. So yeah, things like narrative, hierarchy, visual communication, all the things that turn structure into an actual experience. Yeah, that's where designers still bring the real value. So yeah, after that process of refinement, iteration, design work, this is a sample of what the final result looked like. So although AI helped us move quickly at the start, the final experience was still very much shaped by human decisions and human craft. So just to recap a few takeaways from experimenting with this workflow. First, it's really useful to choose the moments where speed matters more than precision, and definitely that early stage structuring is one of those moments, I think. Second, AI is great at helping you move from nothing to something really quickly, and I think Phil mentioned it earlier, removes that blank page problem and gives you a starting point, helps you get there more quickly. But finally, and probably most importantly, is that final outcome still depends on intent, judgment, and craft. That part is still very much on us. So I think this project was a great reminder that AI is great at getting you from zero to something, but from something to something good, that's still the designer's job. So yeah, that's a little tour of Relume and how we used it. Hopefully you guys found that useful.
All right, so just to wrap up, we really love this quote. I think it says a lot. The last best experience that anyone has anywhere becomes the minimum expectation for the experience they want everywhere. So I think, to just paraphrase, it's saying that like when the bar's raised, everyone gets used to the new level, and now you have to go to the next level to stand out from the crowd. So I think a really good example of this playing out, and you can see what we mean. Like this, I remember the first day I saw this, probably on LinkedIn or something, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Somebody that I know has turned themselves into a little action figure. That's actually pretty sweet. And then suddenly it was like every day, like everyone discovered this idea to like turn themselves into an action figure. And just like probably after like 2 days, I was like, oh, this is so boring. And then it just kept going on and on for like months and months, and more people turning themselves into action figures. So I'm not trying to diss at people like having fun with a hobby or whatever, like that's cool if you want to turn yourself into an action figure. But if we just think about the work we do and the craft we do, like, do you want to be a designer who just, you know, gets AI to copy some concepts and some ideas and some solutions that have already come before and cookie cutter and just spit it out the other end? Like, I don't think that's what any of us got into this industry to do. And so we need to push ourselves to lift above this, like we're drowning in a sea of just content that just all looks the same. So we have to keep on honing our craft, keep pushing to rise above that repetitive, uniform, you know, creativity that's out there. So don't let AI be your ideation spark. We believe human-centered solutioning is the edge you'll have on the competition. So it's all of that stuff we were talking about earlier about, you know, understanding the context, using your human-to-human skills. If you add that as the layer on top of what could be like a pretty status quo solution, that is how you stand out, and that is how you remain commercially viable. Keep honing your brain. So practice out-of-the-box thinking, problem solving, empathy, and creativity, all of the stuff that human craftspeople have always been great at. And like, don't get lazy. You know, I catch myself asking AI to solve something, and I have to catch myself and say, like, wait a minute, I actually want to use my brain for that. It's a real thing. Like, if we stop using our brain to do, you know, to hone our craft, they've done studies where they scan people's brains, and after 6 months of ChatGPT use, you can actually see the gray matter has just like shrunk already. So it happens pretty quick. You got to keep using your brain. Use it or lose it. There's a great movie that tells us what will happen to humanity if we stop using what it means to be human. That's WALL-E. I can remember the moment I watched this, and you could see humans of the future who were just like glued to their televisions and hadn't even moved and don't exercise anymore. And I was just like shocked, like this went under my skin. And I was like, this is so true. This could happen to us. So I think it's up to all of us to, you know, keep pulling the other way. Don't get swept up in this tidal wave of like AI automation. Double down on what humans are good at, what you're good at, and keep honing your craft and keep taking your work to the next level.